Hello, everybody. Imad with XArt here with Eddie and Caryn, family law attorneys. How are you guys doing today?
Good morning. It's great to
Yes,
see you, Mom.
good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Great. So we're gonna get into it here. First of all, I want to ask you guys, like, why pursue the path of becoming family law attorneys in the first place?
Well, I have been practicing exclusively family law for 25 years, and I love doing it because we get to help people in a very meaningful way. Most of the folks that we deal with are in some type of a traumatic situation, and if we can pull them out of that trauma and put them in a better place, that makes us better people.
Oh, wow.
I mean, as far as me, I've always been one of those people that likes to help. I've always been a helper. I was the kid that wanted to help at school and help other people and be the, mentor and whatnot. And I actually found my way into law and being a family law attorney in a more untraditional way because I was a mental health counselor. I was a guidance counselor. I worked with people going through really traumatic situations. And it sort of lent itself over to me having an interest to do more for the clients that I was helping who were sitting on my couch or sitting in my office, and found my way into nighttime law school so that I could get my law degree. And I take these experiences I've had, these moments in my life of being a therapist and a guidance counselor, and using that in my practice of law today. And for me, doing family law gives me that ability to help, sort of like Eddie said, and help these people going through these traumatic situations. And I'm able to do it at an even greater, maybe even more impactful level as an attorney doing it rather than a therapist or a mental health professional, which are very important facets of help in a person's life. But I am happy that I can do it as an attorney. So that's kind of how I found my way into this field. It was the only thing I ever wanted to do, the only kind of law I ever wanted to practice.
I love that. And so let's just get into it here. What are some mistakes that people make with marriage? Probably a bunch. Which
Well,
guys.
I got married way too soon. And unfortunately that marriage didn't work out. But I think marriage is changing, and the way that the courts look at marriage is changing. And I don't know, everybody has a different version of love, but I would make sure you have the maturity level, that you're probably financially secure before you make a decision like that. And be very careful about who you choose, because that's supposed to be a lifetime relationship. And a lot of us are walking around with, for example, undiagnosed mental issues, and you might not appreciate that your partner has those until you get to know them a little better. So I would not rush into it, and I would make sure you really know what you're getting into. We even run background checks on for our old clients when they meet someone, and because they want to know about them. So I think that's very wise to check their criminal histories to see if they've ever had a bankruptcy, to see if they're financially responsible. And knowledge is power.
It's true. I mean, I think that it's interesting that we run background checks for employment, right? We do background checks for people, or credit checks and whatnot, when people want to move in an apartment, but we don't do any of those things. And we have limited knowledge when we enter into a relationship with people. And I think that as a society, I think marriage, like Eddie has said, it changed over the years. And I think people rush into it a lot of times out of love. And that's an important facet, but also knowing the person that you love and knowing everything that goes along with that. So that I think we've made it a way in some regard, even as divorce attorneys, we see it where people run into these relationships and then think, well, it's easy to get out of it. And they have no understanding or wherewithal how difficult it actually is to get out of it, or Eddie and I wouldn't have careers. And it is not just as simple as like the actual marriage signing of a license takes a second, but then the untangling of it can take months or years, or depending upon what's going on in the case, longer than that. And we see people make these mistakes where they rush into things. We have clients that are like, oh, I saw all the red flags, but I did it anyway. And I believe that people can change, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but oftentimes the person that you're marrying is the person that you're divorcing. So it didn't change. You knew what he or she was when you got into it and you rushed into it blindly. So like Eddie said, really knowing what you're getting yourself involved in financially, mentally, emotionally, and being smart about it and looking at this more as a long-term thing instead of a short-term thing that I can just get out of, because it's not that simple.
And legally, what are some of the things that I can do beforehand? Like, say I do want to rush into it, right? Like legally, what are some of the things I can do beforehand to make that entangling a bit easier on the way out?
Well, it's don't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big issue people fight over is who's going to make decisions about their children, how much time they're going to spend with them, what does that look like? A lot of people fight over money. So if maybe you keep your finances a little separate, it really doesn't matter in a divorce because it's all marital, but it's maybe one less thing to fight about. I know a lot of successful couples do maintain their own financial, instead of having one spouse just in charge of everything. And a lot of the problems that we see are when one spouse just gives up total control of the family finances to the other spouse and really doesn't know what's going on. And if they go through a divorce, it's a disaster because the other spouse is usually, kind of shuffled the cards in their favor. So I think you need to be an active participant as a partner in making sure that, you understand financially what's going on, where everything is, and you have a very clear understanding with your partner as to how these things work.
Right. Eddie's right. Kids are the number one thing that we see people fighting about because they're truly one of the most important things that you do and have in your life. But it's not a surprise that kids don't make a marriage better. And people often think, oh, well, have a kid, it'll make things better. It oftentimes it makes it the complete opposite. So you have that many more issues to fight about. And oftentimes people don't talk about how they intend to raise their kids. Some people come from a very different background and they get married and have a child, or they have a child even before marriage sometimes and then later get married. And it's like, no one's talked about how we're raising this child. Are we homeschooling? Are we putting in public school? Do we believe in, corporal punishment, or do we believe on grounding him or her?
Vaccinations.
I mean, littlest things like that, like how we take care of our kids.
And now we go into court, and after they break up, and we have to have these battles if they don't agree, and have some stranger in a black robe make a decision if this kid's going to get a vaccine or not. And that's one of our biggest issues is going to court after the fact and dealing with those types of parental issues that they just can't agree upon.
I mean, we saw it heighten during the pandemic, probably even more so when people were stuck at home during stay-at-home orders and vaccines became available for not just the adults, but later the kids. There were these massive personal conversations having that people didn't ever anticipate having, or could they allow their child to go back to school when the brick and mortar schools reopened? And I mean, we had hearings about whether children should be able to go back to school between our clients. And
we're going to let a judge, who's just a judicial officer make that decision. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
But it would be nice if parents who have high conflict could figure out a way to communicate and make these decisions in a better way. But the process and the way they end up, usually they're not friendly with each other, and sometimes you char the walls on your way out. You burn everything, and that doesn't make that doesn't set the tone for a good co-parenting relationship.
Yeah.
So how would I go about like keeping that communication good even after we sever the ties and everything? How would you recommend that?
Therapy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with two divorced people learning better techniques to communicate. There's also professionals that specifically can help with those decisions if they can't make them themselves instead of going to court. But there's just, and this is more than just divorce. We just have so much conflict in the world and so much noise right now. And, it's almost like a state of mind to be confrontational right now instead of agreeable. And that's going everywhere in society. And we definitely see it with these, previous partners trying to make really important decisions. Like, does my child need this medication
Right.
because they have a condition? And, you know, these are real decisions that should be made by someone other than a judge. But
Yeah.
um,
I try to tell my clients sometimes that just because someone is a crappy partner or a crappy spouse doesn't mean that they are a bad parent. And I think that folks lose sight of that sometimes. Like, you guys didn't work out, right? But that doesn't mean that he or she isn't the best dad or mom out there. And they lose sight of that because they're so angry about the falling apart of their relationship or their marriage. But we try to counsel our clients and remind them, like, sometimes these kids are little, like 1, 2, not even. And you're like, first of all, you're going to be together as co-parents for the rest of these children's minor lives until they turn 18. But even beyond that, like, you guys are going to be grandparents someday, perhaps. And these people are going to be, in your lives. So we try to really get our clients to refocus on that. And like Eddie said, there's a lot of people out there, like parenting coordinators and therapists who can help people have a dialogue as parents. But I really try to remind them, you may hate her or you may hate him, but like, they were a great dad. You at one point decided to have children with that person, right? So you easily thought that they were good at this. So they're not now bad just because you guys don't work. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. So.
And usually that filters down to the kids, and kids hear, either parents or other people disparage the other parent, and that creates so many problems for the child psychologically, because the child is both parents. And so if one side is saying something bad about the other side, that's really saying something bad about the child. And usually we see some behavioral issues because of that, but the real damage comes out later when they, their version of a healthy, normal relationship is not really a healthy, normal relationship. And the cycle continues.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like, wish you were my parents' lawyer when they were going through what they were going through. Cause there was definitely like, the way you guys are going about it and the approach you're having, where it's like, hey, look, don't disparage the other parent to your kid, is definitely the way I wish that they would have gone about it. So you recently wrote a book, which I'm going to give to my mom. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You wrote a book recently. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Well, this is actually my secret way of learning Florida law. We have these weeklies that come out, and every week we get appellate decisions. So the past 20 years, I've been summarizing every family law appellate decision, and it's not a great book for lay people, but for divorce attorneys, it summarizes every family law case that's come out in 20 years in Florida. So some people find some value in that, and it's fun for us because we donate all the proceeds to a charity, and it's a way that we can kind of give back to our community. And the secret is I didn't do this to write a book. I did this so I could learn the law. And it just so happened that I write it down longhand, and that makes me memorize it. And that's my process. And
wow,
by creating that product after 20 years, I have enough to make a pretty big book.
And it's interesting because you can see trends in the law, right? There are moments where alimony is the focus of what's going on, and there's just a flurry of cases that come out about alimony, and then things change, and then you see cases about parenting or time sharing, and you see these trends happen in the law, because what a lot of lay people don't understand is that there's law, and it's not law always in the typical sense. Like, a lot of our law that we work in as attorneys is law that's created by cases that happen, right or wrong, and people appeal them to a higher court, and a decision comes down. And the decision that higher court makes in the state of Florida or nationally affects our practice here. So if the law is one thing and then somebody takes issue with it and brings it up to a higher court, that court comes down with a decision that then trickles down and affects our practice. So it's not always like a statute necessarily, but often it's much of our practice is driven by a case. Like there's in our day-to-day, things that we'll write in motions and pleadings, we'll say pursuant to the whatever case, this is what we're asking for. So I think that a lot of people don't realize that the work that you do every single day, the work that we do, if a case gets appealed and there's a new decision that comes out, law changes on a minute. So you've got to stay up with it. And this is a brilliant way that Eddie's figured out how to do it. But we can see the changes and the cycles of what goes on. And if you're not paying attention, you miss the boat, and you can really do a disservice to your clients because you don't understand that now the law is this, and it happened with this case that came out 3 months ago and whatnot. So it's a really neat kind of geeky thing that you can see all this change. But it's anyway, it's just a great way to track. It's a great way to learn.
Wow, that's that was amazing how you explained how the law really works, and I kind of understand now in suits where they're like, oh, there's precedent. I'm assuming.
Right. This is 20 years of precedence. And
you're using simple terms. I didn't even know what that was when I'd watch Suits. So
you gotta love Suits. Yeah, no, it's true.
Statutes, which are like the boring rules, and then we have the case law, which brings life to those rules and really tells you what direction those rules mean. And if you just look at the rules, you don't understand the life of what the law is. So you have to read them in tandem. And since this is my learning process, I'm not doing this to write a book. I'm doing this to, memorize the law and be the best at what I do. And the fact that we can turn it into something that raises a lot of money for charity is, that makes our hearts warm. So it's a good.
Awesome. Where can they find it? Where can they find the book? I'm going to buy a copy right now, actually.
All you have to do is Google Eddie Stevens Squibs, SQUIBS, or go to our website, ss-familylaw.com, and you can find it. So
ss-familylaw.com.
Yep.
Is it on Amazon?
I don't think it is yet, but it will be soon.
Okay. Once it gets on Amazon, I'll comment under this video with a link to it. Buy it. It goes to charity.
Yes.
And have a cool book that makes you look very sophisticated. And if you're a lawyer, you can actually use it.
And it goes to charity too. So.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good too.
Yeah, but it's a great way to learn everything quickly and to go back because it's organized by subject matter, and you can see all the cases and they start from more recent going backwards. It's great. Even before I was Eddie's partner and before I worked with Eddie, I would buy the book because it was a great learning tool.
Oh, like if you're married.
Well, it's more of a practicer's guide, in fairness. Like really lawyers benefit from it, or someone who's trying to handle their divorce maybe on their own. Eddie will get calls and emails from people that have bought the book or read things online and are trying to represent themselves, and they call with questions, and which is kind of a nice compliment, but or they're seeking free legal advice, one of the two. But nonetheless, it's a great way to teach yourself what the current law is and whatnot. So, yeah.
Buysquib.shop is the link.
Buysquib.shop. Okay. Everybody go check it out. And I appreciate your time. I'd love to do this again, by the way. But I appreciate you guys' time. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Ahmad, it was great to chat with you, and good luck with the program.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.